Hello guys. In today's video, I tell you an impressive story that will stir your emotions and make you think about the future of humanity. Meet Larkin Creed, an aeronautical engineer who, after a terrible plane crash, is thrust into a post-apocalyptic world and sees things that defy explanation. What he discovered about the destiny of the Earth and the interconnectedness of all things will leave you speechless. So before starting, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any amazing content like this, and turn on the bell to receive all notifications. Now, prepare yourself for this extraordinary and eye-opening journey. My name is Larkin Creed, and I am about to share with you an experience that completely changed my life and my view of the world. Before we dive into this amazing journey, let me tell you a little about who I was. I was born and raised in the 1960s, a time of great technological advances in space exploration. These wonders of science and engineering captivated my imagination from a young age, shaping my interests and, ultimately, my career. I became an aeronautical engineer, fascinated by the idea of dominating the sky and perhaps one day space. My job allowed me to work with the most advanced technologies of the time, designing and testing aircraft that pushed the limits of what was possible. I lived and breathed engineering, always seeking perfection in every detail, in every calculation. This incessant quest for absolute control has extended to every aspect of my life. I was known for my precision and perfectionism. My colleagues admired me, but they also feared me a little. I demanded a lot from myself and, therefore, from others. My home was an example of careful organization, my routine timed to the second. I believed that if I could control every variable in my existence, I would achieve complete success and happiness. However, this obsession with control came at a price. My personal relationship suffered. My wife often complained about my lack of spontaneity, my inability to let things happen. My children viewed me more as a strict disciplinarian than a loving father. And, to cope with the constant stress I imposed on myself, I developed addictions that I carefully hid from the outside world. I have lived a life of contradictions. On the outside, I was an example of a successful professional, respected in my field, with a seemingly perfect family. Inside, I was constantly battling my own demons, trying to maintain control over my impulses and desires that threatened to destroy the facade I had so carefully constructed. It is in this context that destiny decided to intervene. In 2016, at age 56, I was at the peak of my career, about to lead a revolutionary aeronautical project. Little did I know that a simple test flight would change everything, taking me on a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, control, and the purpose of existence. It was a sunny Tuesday in September. I remember it vividly because I had obsessively checked the weather forecast the days before, as I always did before a test flight. The conditions were perfect: clear sky, calm wind, excellent visibility. There was no indication that this day would be any different from so many others I had driven. The plane I was going to test that day was a vintage plane, a 1950s model that we had restored and modified with modern technology. It was a personal project of mine, a way to combine my passion for aviation history with my knowledge of cutting-edge engineering. I spent weeks checking every detail, every connection, every solder. I was sure everything would go perfectly. I arrived at the hangar at 6:08 a.m., 2 hours before the scheduled takeoff time. I wish I had time to do one last thorough inspection. My team was already there, preparing everything. I followed the pre-flight procedures as meticulously as usual, checking and rechecking every item on the list. At 8 a.m. sharp, I drive to the track. The roar of the engines was music to my ears. I accelerated, feeling the familiar pressure pushing me against the seat as the plane picked up speed. In seconds, we were in the air. The feeling of freedom I felt in that moment was indescribable. There, in the heavens, I was in complete control. At least, that's what I thought. The first 30 minutes of the flight went normally. I performed the planned maneuvers, tested the aircraft's response, collected data. Everything indicated that the project was a success. I was at 4,000 meters above sea level when I heard the first strange noise. It was just a crack, almost imperceptible, but enough to make me alert. I checked the instruments. Everything seemed normal. But then, without warning, the engine failed. The sudden silence was deafening. For a moment I stood frozen in disbelief. This couldn't happen. Not with me. Not with my perfectly designed and tested plane. The reality of the situation hit me like a punch in the gut. I immediately initiated emergency procedures by trying to restart the engine. Nothing worked. The plane quickly lost altitude. My brain worked frantically, calculating angles, speeds, distances. I looked for a place for an emergency landing, but all I saw was forest below me. The seconds seemed to drag on as I struggled to maintain control of the plane. Sweat ran down my face. My hands gripped the controls tightly. For the first time in many years, I felt real, pure, paralyzing fear. I realized that, despite all my experience, all my knowledge, I was completely powerless against the forces of nature. The ground was approaching faster and faster. I knew the impact would be violent. In the last seconds before the collision, a strange feeling of calm came over me. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in decades, I prayed. Not by miracle, but by acceptance. The impact was brutal. I heard the sound of metal twisting, glass shattering. I felt a sharp pain run through my entire body. And then, the darkness. A deep and absolute silence enveloped me. At that moment, between life and death, I did not know that I was about to embark on the most extraordinary journey of my life. I can't say how long I was unconscious. It could have taken seconds, hours, or even days. When I finally opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was silence. A silence so deep and absolute that it seemed to have its own substance, as if it could be touched. Slowly, my vision began to adjust. I expected to see the twisted interior of the plane cabin, or maybe the white ceiling of a hospital room. But what I saw defied logical explanation. I was lying in the middle of a street, surrounded by dilapidated buildings that stood like skeletons against a gray, menacing sky. I sat up, feeling a phantom pain course through my body. I say ghost, because despite the very vivid memory of the impact, there was no visible injury. I looked at my hands, expecting to see them bloody, but they were clean, without a single scratch. I stood up with difficulty, my legs trembling under my weight. The air was heavy, heavy with the smell of ozone, as if a storm was about to break. But there was no wind, not the slightest movement of air. Everything was perfectly still. I began walking down the deserted street, my footsteps echoing ominously between the abandoned buildings. Shattered glass shattered beneath my feet, the sound seeming absurdly loud in the oppressive silence. The facades of the buildings were covered in strange vegetation, a green so dark that it seemed almost black. I didn't recognize any of the plants. They were alien shapes, twisted and unsettling. As I progressed, a feeling of déjà vu began to bother me. There was something familiar about this place, despite its apocalyptic appearance. It was then that I saw, half hidden behind a tangle of twisted beams, a sign. My heart almost stopped when I read that name. It was the street where I lived. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was in my city, or at least a distorted and devastated version of it. The buildings I knew so well were nothing but empty shells, silent witnesses to an unimaginable catastrophe. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe I was in a coma, and it was some sort of elaborate hallucination created by my injured brain. Or maybe I was dead, and this was some sort of personal purgatory or hell. As I struggled to comprehend my situation, I noticed something on the horizon that made me stop abruptly. It was a structure that definitely had no place in this desolate landscape. Something big, metallic, shiny. Something that seemed to call to me. Having no other apparent option, I began walking towards this anomaly. Every step I took seemed to take me further away from the reality I knew, and closer to something beyond my understanding. The fear and confusion I felt was almost palpable, but there was also a strange sense of purpose. As if, somehow, I knew this mysterious structure held the answers I was looking for. As I got closer, the sky seemed to get darker, the clouds thicker. The charged atmosphere made my skin tingle with static electricity. And there, amidst the chaos and destruction, this structure stood as a beacon of order and purpose. I had no idea what awaited me, but I knew I was going to find out. As I got closer, the details of the metal structure began to reveal themselves. It was a colossal building, at least 30 meters high, whose smooth, silvery surface reflected the diffused light of the cloudy sky. Its shape was unusual, a gigantic metallic egg, perfectly symmetrical, resting on a circular base. As I got closer, I noticed that the surface of the egg was not completely smooth as it appeared from a distance. It was covered in intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change subtly as I moved. It was as if the structure itself was alive, slowly breathing. I circled the base of the structure, looking for an entrance or some indication of its function. That's when I noticed something even stranger. The bottom of the egg was transparent, allowing me to see the inside. What I saw left me stunned. Inside the structure was a complex system of gears, some physical and others appearing to be made of pure light. They rotated at different speeds and in different directions, creating a hypnotic ballet of movement and light. The gears varied in size, from small cogwheels to huge discs that appeared to be the diameter of a car. Most fascinating was that the gears did not appear to be connected by any visible mechanism. Some floated freely in the air, others resembled phases between the solid and the ethereal. Colors flowed through them, creating patterns that reminded me of binary code, mathematical equations, and, strangely, memories of my own life. As I watched, I felt an irresistible attraction. It was as if each cog contained a fragment of a greater truth, a piece of a cosmic puzzle that I had to decipher. My engineering mind was desperately trying to find logic in this seemingly chaotic system, but it was like trying to understand a foreign language. I reached out, almost unconsciously, to touch the surface of the structure. The moment my fingers came into contact with the metal, I felt a vibration run through my entire body. It wasn't unpleasant, but intense, as if every cell of my being resonated with the frequency of the structure. It was then that I noticed something that had escaped my initial attention. There was an opening at the base of the structure, a sort of oval portal that gently pulsed with a bluish light. It was a silent invitation, a passage into this mechanical enigma. I hesitated for a moment, caution battling curiosity. All my life I have been guided by logic and reason, always calculating the risks and benefits before acting. But there, faced with this inexplicable wonder, I felt that the normal rules did not apply. I made a decision. If this structure held answers about where I was and what happened to me, I needed to explore it. With my heart pounding and my mind full of questions, I took a step toward the gate. When I crossed it, I felt like I was being drawn into a whirlwind. Colors and light swirled around me, and for a moment I lost all sense of direction and gravity. When I finally regained my balance, I found myself in the center of the structure, surrounded on all sides by the gears I had observed outside. The interior was even more impressive. The gears turned around me in a silent and precise ballet. Some were so big I could easily walk on them, while others were tiny, almost microscopic. The air vibrated with palpable energy, and I could feel the rhythmic pulse of the structure, as if it were a giant mechanical heart. As my eyes adjusted to the environment, I began to notice patterns in the gears. Some showed images that resembled scenes from my life, moments from the past that I had long forgotten. Others showed places and people I didn't recognize, events that seemed to belong to an unrealized future. Fascinated and a little scared, I reached out to touch one of the nearby gears. The moment my fingers made contact, a wave of sensations and memories washed over me. I saw myself as a child, building my first airplane model. I felt the excitement of my first solo flight. I rediscovered the joy of the birth of my son. I withdrew my hand, stunned by the intensity of the experience. It was then that I heard a voice, not with my ears, but directly in my mind. "Welcome to Between Larkin Creed," the voice said, soft but commanding. "Are you ready to understand?" I looked around, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one other than me in this surreal space. "Who are you?" I asked out loud, my voice echoing strangely among the spinning gears. "What is this place?" The voice responded with a calmness that contrasted with my growing anxiety. "I am many and none. I am the guardian of this place, the interpreter of the between. And you, Larkin, stand on the threshold between what was and what will be." I felt my heart speed up. "Am I dead?" I asked, fearing the answer. "Death, life, these are such limited concepts," the voice replied. "Here, in the in-between, you are beyond these definitions. It is a place of infinite possibilities, where past, present, and future converge." I looked again at the gears around me, beginning to understand that each represented not just moments, but choices, decisions, life paths. "Why am I here?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "You are here to learn, to see, to understand," said the voice. "Every gear is a choice, every movement a consequence. Here you can see the fabric of your existence and, perhaps, rearrange some of the threads." As I processed these words, I noticed that some gears seemed brighter than others, catching my attention. "What should I do?" I asked, feeling both lost and strangely determined. "Explore," the voice replied. "Touch, feel, learn, but remember, Larkin, every choice has a price, and not all truths are easy to accept." With these enigmatic words echoing in my mind, I stepped forward, ready to delve deeper into this surreal journey. Little did I know that I was about to face not only my past and my future, but also the very essence of who I was and who I could become. With a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, I began to explore the maze of gears around me. Each step I took seemed to subtly change the mood around me, as if the structure itself was responding to my presence and intentions. I approached a particularly large and shiny piece of equipment. Its surface reflected a scene I immediately recognized. It was the day I decided to become an aeronautical engineer. I was just 12 years old, at a school science fair, marveling at a model jet plane. I remembered the excitement, the feeling of purpose I felt at that moment. Hesitantly, I reached out and touched the equipment. From the moment my fingers made contact, I was flooded with an avalanche of sensations and memories. He wasn't just reliving the moment, but he was experiencing it from a completely new perspective. I could feel the impact that this decision had on my entire subsequent life, the opportunities that presented themselves, the challenges that I had faced, the people that I had met thanks to this choice. But there was more. I also saw the paths not taken, the other possibilities that opened up at this crucial moment. And with that vision came a sharp pain, a feeling of loss for all the lives I could have lived but didn't. I pulled my hand away, panting, trying to comprehend the intensity of the experience. The voice echoed in my mind again. "Every choice shapes not only our future but also our past. What we think of as fixed and unchanging is actually fluid and malleable." Driven by an impulse that I could not explain, I moved into another gear. This one was smaller, almost opaque, turning slowly in one corner. Touching it, I was transported to a moment I had tried to forget, the day I decided to prioritize my work over my family, missing my son's 10th birthday. The pain of this memory was almost physical. I felt the weight of disappointment in my son's eyes, the silent frustration in my wife. But again, the perspective was different. I could see how this decision, although painful, set off a series of events that ultimately led me to reevaluate my priorities. "The choices that weigh us the most," said the voice, "are often the ones that teach us the most." I continued my exploration, touching on gears that represented pivotal moments in my life. My marriage, the birth of my children, professional successes, personal failures. Each contact brought back not only the memory of the event, but also a deep understanding of its ramifications and connections with other aspects of my existence. Some gears were painful to touch, sending waves of regret and remorse through my being. Others brought joy and fulfillment, reminding me of times of true happiness and accomplishment. Over time, I started to notice trends. I saw how my obsession with control was rooted in deep childhood fears and insecurities. I realized how my relentless pursuit of professional perfection often came at the expense of meaningful emotional connections. At some point, I came across equipment that was different from the rest. It pulsed with a soft, inviting light. When I touched it, I wasn't transported to a specific memory, but rather to a sense of future possibilities. I got a glimpse of a life where balance replaced obsession, where connection was valued as much as fulfillment. The future, says the voice, is a field of infinite possibilities, shaped by the choices of the present. As I reflected on this statement, I noticed that some gears began to shift position, as if responding to my new perceptions and understandings. The entire structure seemed to recalibrate itself. That's when I realized this journey wasn't just about revisiting the past or imagining the future. It was an opportunity to reconfigure the very fabric of my existence, to realign the workings of my life in a more harmonious and meaningful way. Upon realizing this, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The possibilities were vast, but also frightening. What choices should I make now, with this new understanding? How could I take advantage of this unique opportunity to redefine my journey? As I pondered these questions, the voice spoke again. Remember, Larkin, that the true power lies not in controlling each piece of equipment, but in understanding how they connect and flow together. Nodding silently, I prepared myself for the next phase of this extraordinary journey, knowing that every choice I made from now on would have a profound impact not only on me, but also on the complex fabric of reality around me. As I continued my exploration, I began to notice that some gears seemed heavier, more difficult to move. These, I realized, represented the most difficult choices of my life, ones whose consequences I still carried with me. One of these gears, particularly large and seemingly immobile, caught my attention. Its surface was dark, almost opaque, as if it resisted my inspection. I hesitated for a moment, fearing what I might find, but I knew I had to face whatever it was. Taking a deep breath, I touched the equipment. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. I was transported to one of the darkest moments of my life. The day my obsession with work led me to miscalculate on a crucial project, an error which, although corrected in time, could have cost lives if it had not been detected. The guilt and fear I felt that day came over me again, but this time I could see beyond the moment. I saw how deeply this near disaster affected my psyche, fueling my need for control and perfection. I saw how this drove a wedge between me and those close to me, as I buried myself deeper and deeper into work, trying to make up for a mistake that no one but me knew about. The consequences of our actions are not always immediate or obvious, the voice said, now with a tone of compassion. Sometimes they unfold slowly, shaping our reality in ways we barely notice. As I processed these words, I noticed that the gears began to move slowly, as if confronting this memory had released something. Motivated by this change, I looked for other equally heavy equipment. Each represented a difficult choice, a moment of weakness or an error of judgment. I played them out one by one, facing the consequences of each decision. The moment I chose to lie to a colleague to advance my career, destroying a friendship in the process. The time I ignored signs that my son was struggling in school, too busy with my own projects to truly listen to his needs. The decision to hide my workaholic and perfectionism from my wife created an emotional distance that almost destroyed our marriage. Each memory was painful to relive, but with each confrontation, I felt a weight lifted. The gears, previously heavy and immobile, began to turn more freely. Recognition is the first step towards change, the voice commented. By facing these choices and their consequences, you open the door to new possibilities. As I progressed through this process of confrontation and acceptance, I noticed a change in the environment around me. The gears began to move more smoothly, some lining up in ways I hadn't noticed before. That's when I realized something crucial. The consequences of my actions weren't just about me. Every choice I made impacted the lives of those around me, creating ripples that rippled far beyond my immediate circle. I saw how my obsessive quest for control had affected my children, shaping their own views of success and fulfillment. I realized how my fear of failure had limited not only my own potential, but also that of those who worked with me. Our lives are interconnected in ways we rarely understand, the voice said. Every action, every choice has the potential to shape not only our destiny, but that of countless others. This realization was both frightening and liberating. Scary because it made me realize the weight of responsibility we carry in every decision. Freeing because it showed me that just as our actions can cause pain, they also have the power to heal and transform. As I continued to explore and face the consequences of my choices, I felt a shift coming over me. The fear and guilt I had carried for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a deeper understanding and a sense of renewed determination. The gears around me seemed to respond to this internal change, moving more smoothly and harmoniously. It was as if, by accepting and understanding the consequences of my past actions, I was paving the way for a different future. "Remember," said the voice, "the past cannot be changed, but how we interpret and respond to it is always in our hands." With this understanding, I prepared for the next stage of my journey, knowing that each step forward would be taken with a new awareness of the impact of my choices not only on my own life, but on the lives of all those who surround me. As I continued my journey through this mechanical maze of memories and possibilities, I noticed a subtle change in the environment. The gears, once so solid and defined, began to have a more ethereal quality. Some seemed almost transparent, others changed shape as I looked at them. The now familiar voice echoed in my mind. "You are coming to a deeper understanding, Larkin. What you see now is the fluid nature of reality." Intrigued by this change, I reached out to touch one of the more transparent gears. The moment my fingers made contact, I felt a strange sensation, like I was trying to hold water. The equipment collapsed into a luminous mist, dispersing into the air around me. Surprised, I stepped back. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "You are learning the lesson of detachment," the voice replied. "To truly move forward, you have to be willing to let go." I looked around and noticed other gears starting to exhibit the same ethereal behavior. I realized that each of them represented something I held tightly to in my life. My desire for control, my obsessive quest for perfection, my deep-rooted fears and insecurities. "But if I let these things go," I said, "what will be left of me?" The voice responded softly, "What will remain is your true essence, free from the limitations you have imposed on yourself." Hesitantly, I approached another report. It represented my need to always be right, to never show vulnerability. I took a deep breath and, with conscious effort, let my fingers pass through it. The equipment dissolved, and with it, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Encouraged by this feeling, I began to move through space, allowing each cog that represented an unhealthy attachment to dissolve at my touch. My fear of failure, my tendency to judge others and myself harshly, my reluctance to ask for help, one by one, these patterns that had defined me for so long fell apart. As I progressed through this process, I noticed that not all of the gears dissolved. Some remained solid, glowing with a soft, comforting light. These, I realized, represented the fundamental aspects of my being. My creativity, my compassion, although often repressed, my love of discovery and learning. "Letting go doesn't mean losing everything," the voice explained. "It means releasing what no longer serves you so you can fully embrace what truly matters." As more and more gears dissolved, the space around me began to change. Rigid, mechanical structures have given way to a more fluid, organic environment. It was as if I was floating in an ocean of possibilities, with currents of energy and light moving around me. In this new space, I began to see a potential future. Me, more relaxed and present with my family. Collaborate with colleagues in more open and creative ways. Facing challenges with a blend of confidence and humility that previously seemed impossible. "What you see now," the voice said, "are the possibilities that open up when you free yourself from the limitations you impose on yourself." I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, a mixture of joy, fear, and a deep sense of liberation. I realized I was crying, tears flowing freely for the first time in years. Crying is also a way of letting go, the voice commented softly. As I assimilated this experience, I began to truly understand the meaning of letting go. It was not about losing or giving up, but about creating space for the new, for growth, for transformation. Remember, Larkin, said the voice, letting go is an ongoing process. Even after you leave this place, you will be challenged to practice this lesson again and again in your life. I nodded, feeling a new determination growing within me. I knew the road ahead would not be easy, that old habits and patterns would try to reassert themselves. But now I had a new perspective, a deeper understanding of what really mattered. As I prepared for the rest of this extraordinary journey, I felt lighter, freer than ever. The future, once a place of anxiety and tight control, now seemed like a field of endless possibilities. I'm ready, I said out loud, my voice echoing in the space around me. What's next? The answer did not come through words, but through a change of environment. The energy currents began to intensify, forming a new pattern in front of me. Intuitively, I knew it was time to take the next step in my journey of self-discovery and transformation. As I moved through the energetic currents, I felt a profound change in the environment around me. The fluid, ethereal shapes began to solidify again, but in a completely different way than I had experienced before. Instead of mechanical gears, I found myself surrounded by a vast network of glowing lines, intertwined in intricate and beautiful ways. The voice, now seeming to come from everywhere at once, spoke, "What you see now, Larkin, is the web of existence. Each line represents a life, a choice, a moment, and every intersection is a starting point, where lives touch and influence each other." Astonished, I reached out to touch one of the glowing lines. The moment my fingers made contact, I was flooded with a series of visions and sensations. I saw myself as a child again, building my first model airplane. But this time, I also saw the impact of that moment, the pride in my father's eyes, which inspired him to spend more time with me, sparked interest in a classmate who would later become a renowned aerospace engineer. The spark of creativity that this experience ignited in me, influencing countless future decisions. I moved my hand to another intersection of lines and experienced another stream of consciousness. The day I decided to prioritize an important project for my son's birthday. I saw the disappointment in his eyes, but I also saw how that moment led him to develop a resilience and independence that will serve him well in the future. I saw how my wife, in response to my absence, strengthened her bond with our son, creating a family dynamic I had not noticed before. Each touch revealed new connections, new ramifications of cause and effect that extended far beyond what I could have imagined. "It's all connected," the voice said. "Every action, every choice, every moment of your life has an impact that extends far beyond what you can immediately see or understand." As I explored the network more, I began to see not only the effects of my own actions, but also how the actions of others had shaped my life. I saw how encouragement from an elementary school teacher planted the seed of my passion for engineering. I saw how an act of kindness from a stranger on a difficult day saved me from making a potentially disastrous decision. "We exist in a web of interconnections," the voice continues. "None of us are truly separate or isolated. Each life touches countless others, often in ways we never realize." This revelation hit me with overwhelming force. All my life I have strived to be in control, to be independent, to not depend on anyone. But now I saw clearly that this view was not only impossible, but fundamentally wrong. But if everything is so interconnected, I asked, how can we have free will? How can our choices truly be our own? The voice responded with a note of wisdom. "Free will does not exist in the absence of connections, but rather in the way we respond to them. Your choices are yours, but they are informed and influenced by the entire web of existence." I continued to explore the network, each contact revealing new connections, new understandings. I saw how my actions had created repercussions, some positive, others less so. I saw how the actions of others had shaped me, challenged me, supported me, Little by little, I began to feel a deep sense of humility and gratitude. Humility to realize that I was only a small part of something much bigger. Gratitude for all the connections, all the influences that made me who I was. With this understanding, the voice said, comes great responsibility. Every choice you make has the potential to affect countless lives. How will you live with this knowledge? I thought deeply about this question. I realized that I could no longer live as if my actions only affected me. Every decision, every interaction, every moment was an opportunity to create positive repercussions in the network of existence. I will live conscientiously, I finally replied. With compassion, understanding that every person I meet, every situation I face is part of a larger web of connections and possibilities. I felt the silent approval of the voice, and the network around me seemed to vibrate with a more intense light. You are ready for the next stage of your journey, the voice said. But remember, Larkin, what you have learned here is not only knowledge to be preserved, but truth to be lived. With these words, I felt the network begin to move, to reorganize itself. I knew I was about to enter a new phase of understanding, one that would challenge and further expand my perception of reality and my place in it. As the web of connections reorganized around me, I felt a change in atmosphere. It was as if all the experiences, all the lessons I had absorbed so far were converging into a single point of understanding. The voice spoke again, this time with a tone of finality. Larkin, you have reached the point of synthesis. Here, all the lessons come together, forming a new understanding of reality and your place in it. In front of me, the array's light lines began to merge, creating a sphere of pulsing light. Inside, I could see the reflection of all the experiences I had during this extraordinary journey. Touch the sphere, the voice ordered. Let the synthesis of the lessons flow through you. With a mixture of apprehension and anticipation, I reached out and touched the shiny surface of the sphere. At the moment of contact, I felt a wave of knowledge and understanding wash over me. Lesson 1. The Illusion of Control. I saw clearly how my obsession with control had been a vain attempt to avoid fear and uncertainty. I realized that true strength comes not from trying to control the uncontrollable, but from learning to navigate life's inevitable changes with grace and adaptability. Lesson 2. The Power of Detachment. I understood that letting go did not mean losing, but rather creating space for new possibilities. By letting go of limiting beliefs, fears, and rigid expectations, I have opened the way for growth and transformation. Third lesson, the interdependence of all things. I deeply realized how every action, every choice, every moment of my life was intrinsically linked to a larger fabric of existence. This understanding was accompanied by a feeling of responsibility and also of belonging. Lesson 4. The Fluid Nature of Reality. I understood that reality is not fixed or solid, but rather a constant flow of possibilities. My perceptions and choices actively shape the reality I experience. Lesson 5. The Importance of Authenticity. I saw how many of my struggles were born from trying to be someone I wasn't, from trying to live up to external expectations instead of honoring my true essence. As these lessons solidified in my consciousness, I felt a profound transformation occurring within me. It was as if all the layers of conditioning, fear, and self-imposed limitations were dissolving, revealing a core of clarity and purpose. The voice continued. These lessons are not just concepts to be understood intellectually, but truths to be lived. How will you integrate this understanding into your life? I have thought deeply about this question. I realized that going back to my previous life and continuing as before was no longer an option. This trip had fundamentally changed me. I will live conscientiously, I replied. Every day will be an opportunity to practice letting go, to honor the connections I have with others and the world around me. I will seek a balance between accepting what I cannot change and having the courage to change what I can. I continued. I will strive to be authentic, to live according to my deepest values, and not according to the expectations of others. And above all, I will remember that every moment is an opportunity to create positive vibes in the web of existence, to make choices that benefit not only me, but everyone whose lives touch mine. I felt a wave of approval emanate from the voice. You have learned well, Larkin, but remember that learning is an ongoing process. Each day will bring new challenges and new opportunities to apply these lessons. I nodded, understanding the depth of this truth.
I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be times when I would be tempted to fall back into old patterns. But now I had a new perspective, a deeper understanding that would guide me. The sphere of light began to pulse more intensely, and I felt that my journey to this extraordinary place was coming to an end. A mix of emotions came over me: gratitude for the experience, apprehension about returning, and a deep sense of peace and purpose.
You are ready to come back, said the voice. Take with you what you have learned here. Let it guide your actions, your choices, your way of being in the world. With these words, the sphere of light expanded, completely enveloping me. I felt carried away, transported through the layers of existence. I slowly opened my eyes, blinking from the bright light. For a moment I was disoriented, not knowing where I was or how much time had passed. Little by little, the outlines of a hospital room began to form around me. I heard the constant beeping of the machines and felt the gentle touch of a hand holding mine. Larkin? My wife Sarah's voice trembled with emotion. You're awake. I turned my head to look at her, seeing tears of relief in her eyes. I wanted to speak, but my throat was dry. Sarah quickly offered me a glass of water, helping me drink it. How long? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse. 3 weeks, she replied softly. You've been in a coma since the accident. The doctors, they didn't know if you would wake up. 3 weeks. It seemed impossible. My journey into the between had seemed both timeless and eternal. How could this only last 3 weeks? In the days that followed, I was informed of the details of the accident and of my miraculous recovery. The plane had crashed in a remote area, and I was found seriously injured, but alive. The doctors talked about how lucky I was and how miraculous it was that I survived. But I knew it was more than luck or a miracle. It was a second chance, an opportunity to live out the lessons I had learned during my experience. As I recovered physically, I began to implement the changes I knew were needed in my life. It wasn't easy. Old habits and thought patterns attempted to reassert themselves, but I was determined to honor the lessons I had received. I started by having honest, raw, vulnerable conversations with Sarah and my children, opening up about my fears, my failures, and my desire for change. I was surprised by the receptivity and support I received. I realized that by opening up, I was creating space for them to be more authentic with me, too. At work, I approached my projects with a new perspective. Instead of seeking absolute control, I began to trust my team more, to value different points of view. I discovered that when I loosened the reins a little, creativity and innovation flourished in ways I had never imagined. I began practicing mindfulness and meditation daily, reminding myself of the interconnectedness of all things and the fluid nature of reality. It has helped me face daily challenges with more grace and less stress. I also began to become more involved in my community, recognizing that every interaction, every act of kindness had the potential to create positive impacts that extended far beyond what I could see. It wasn't an overnight transformation. There were difficult days, times when I wondered if I had really changed, but every time I stumbled, I remembered the lessons I had learned and recommitted myself to the path I had chosen. A year after the accident, I was sitting in the garden watching the sunset with Sarah. Our kids were nearby, laughing and chatting as they prepared a barbecue. You look different, Sarah said, shaking my hand. No longer present, no more, you. I smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had a second chance, I replied, and I try to make the best use of it. As the sky turned orange and pink, I reflected on my trip. The near-death experience was intense and sometimes frightening, but also deeply transformative. She taught me that life is not about control or perfection, but about connection, authenticity, and continuous growth. I looked at my family, at the bright sky, and at the future that stretched out before me. I didn't know what this future held for me, but I knew I would face each moment with new awareness, new gratitude, and new purpose. My journey between worlds was over, but my true journey, that of living fully with awareness and compassion, was only beginning. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a larger number of people. Until next time.